Hey there, it's Sara Black Spiker here. I know it has been a hot minute since the last time we spoke like this, and something's been laying on my heart for the past couple of, I want to say days, but it's probably been closer to weeks, if not even months, marinating, and today it feels like it's finally ready to be expressed. So I wanted to have a heart-to-heart with you if you are finding yourself in a space where things are just, it might feel like you're in a dark night of the soul, as we say. Things are just heavy. Things have come to a stall. Things are shaking up, falling apart. On one hand, you're releasing what used to be and some things that used to work. On the other hand, the new stuff has not fully emerged yet. Maybe you don't even see the path forward just yet. But most likely you still have this fire in your heart that keeps moving you forward, that helps you get out of the bed every single morning against all odds, more or less feeling optimistic for every single day. I wanted to tell you that whatever it is, wherever this video finds you, you're not alone. And that's the most important thing I want you to hear. You are not alone. Now, before we dive deeper, I wanted to make a full disclosure. I don't have any agenda here today. I don't have anything to sell to you. I don't have any secret magical formulas because, first and foremost, I don't blindly prescribe things, especially not without consent. But I do want to acknowledge where you are. I do want to share with you parts of my own journey and parts of the journeys of people that I got to work with, because I know for a fact that when you are in those moments, it feels like you're alone. This sense of isolation is incredibly heavy. And when you have a reputation to uphold, when you have expectations to live up to, when you have so much responsibilities on your shoulders and it feels like no one else can possibly understand, you're most likely right. There are very few who can possibly understand what is that you're going through. And even those few are most likely not sharing their experiences, or maybe they're sharing them once they're PR polished and Rex to reach a story designed to inspire, but most often living out the most crucial parts, the most authentic parts, the most painful and darkest parts, and also the parts that really would be super helpful right now. Not to mention, those designed stories usually come out after the fact, when everything is said and done already, when somebody already found the solution. So my intention is to not to bring you down, but to acknowledge that even if you do feel down, that this is part of journey. It happens. You're not alone. And also to offer maybe the answer, maybe permission, maybe the idea, maybe a recognition of a pattern, maybe a motivation, whatever it is that you're looking for. Hopefully it comes through, and hopefully by the end of this video you just feel a little bit better, a little bit more upbeat, a little bit more hopeful, a little bit more determined, or even allowing yourself to just rest. Now, before we dive into that, I also want to acknowledge the other universe of people out there, if I may say so, because it feels like 2025 was kind of like a year of duality for many. On one hand, we have those who are who have faced what I call this era of transformation, when all things are being released, the new ones are emerged, what used to work doesn't work anymore, identity is coming to a completion. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear, a lot of unraveling, a lot of frustration as a result. And then we have the universe of those who have overachieved, who have ticked off the boxes of the bucket list, who have reached the highest of the highs, who have really lived the best life of their life thus far, who have broken records with your businesses, who have accomplished so much, who have felt the excitement, the fulfillment, deeper meaning, all the amazingness of life. If this is you, I want to say how much I appreciate you, how much I celebrate you, how deeply I honor you. And I want you to know that sometimes it might feel uncomfortable to share all these successes, especially when you have people around you who might not be as enthusiastic and happy for you as you would hope. But I want you to know that you sharing this journey is or can be the light that somebody desperately needs to see. It could be as a reminder that there still is so much available, so much possible. So please do not dim your light for the comfort of those individuals around you who cannot take your greatness. Remind them to get some sunglasses and put them on if needed. But you please keep on shining, keep on being you. Really, the world needs that positivity and that charge and that excitement and that goodness. Okay, so now we can go back to the so-called originally scheduled programming. So as I was saying, 2025 was challenging for so many people. Those of us who identify as high achievers. Here's the tricky thing. Many of us have been trained and wired to just push through, to compartmentalize those emotions that are perceived as difficult, as challenging, as negative, if you will, and to just push them aside and focus on what's ahead. Or maybe we have been trained to channel those fears and frustration and anger and sadness and disappointment and disbelief and whatever is that you're experiencing that makes you actually a human, and channel them into motivation to keep on going, to keep on pushing. But there comes a time in some of our lives when that pushing doesn't get you anywhere, when you need to actually be honest with yourself and give yourself permission to stop, to give yourself a permission to take a pause and to really take a deeper look and feel the next step. As somebody who does feel with my whole body, what I'm talking about is this sensation that could serve as a compass. For me personally, when I'm still and when I really allow that guidance to come through, it comes as two distinct sensations. One feels heavy, it feels dark, it feels like a mist fog around my head and rock on my shoulders. And that's an indication that the path that I'm taking, the thing that I'm pushing, whatever it is that I'm trying to make happen just isn't mine. And sometimes it's simply a story that I'm telling myself. Simply isn't mine. It feels heavy. I can know for a fact that it's not mine. On the other hand, there's this sensation of lightness, expansiveness, ease, and that is the indicator that I'm on the right path. As a human design 5-3 generator, sacral authority, frustration is also that indicator. If I go to bed at night and I feel frustrated, then that's an indicator that whatever I was trying to push through that day was probably against my best interest. And if I feel today was a good day, those are some indicators. And I know that's really, really generalizing how our lives go as high achievers. You and I both know that we have so many roles, we have so many responsibilities, there are so many expectations that we carry, and there's so many different things that we get to do that if only it was that easy, right? But that's the first thing that I wanted to offer, is to allow yourself that stillness. I used to be a basketball player, And that was one of the things that I have learned under the pressure. You perform, you excel under pressure. The higher the stakes, the sharper the performance, because this is what we train for. So we are used to compress things. We're used to feed our energy from that external world. But again, at certain point in life, things might start changing, things might start shifting, and more than the external world, we need to learn how to really reconnect with ourselves, with parts of ourselves that have been neglected in the pursuit of excellence. And that is scary, and that can feel so discombobulated. Is that even a word? I know it's a word in English, but you know what I mean. That, yeah, it's scary, it's unknown, and it does take time to reactivate those parts. It takes time to embody your whole self. Again, parts of you that you have dismissed, that you have suppressed, that you have neglected. In working with my clients and even with myself, you know, sometimes it's something as simple as working with clay. Sometimes it's something as simple as touching the ground, gardening, or even hugging a tree, you know. Sometimes that's a different kind of movement. You know, basketball was very rigid, very hard on the body. So movement in terms of a dance, movement in terms of yoga, movement in terms of, you know, whatever calls to you. Trying something different to really get back into your body. Sometimes it's the total opposite, you know, high intensity, high interval training, adrenaline pumping might feel like a relief momentarily, but in the long term, it might be just feeding the cycle of that cortisol addiction, so to speak. Now, I'm not, by no stretch of imagination, am I a psychiatrist, psychologist, a trainer. I don't work with hormones. So just a cautious reminder here, I'm simply speaking from my own personal experience here, that as inviting as it might seem to go lift some heavy weights, to go do some sprints and do some cardio hard workout, it just prolongs the cycle, and it can be really hard sometimes and challenging to break the cycle and allow yourself to lean into something new and different, and at times very uncomfortable, because like we said, you are in a process of reconnecting with parts that you forgot existed. So that is like a somatic aspect, right, if you will, of this part of the journey that a lot of us have gone through. A lot of us are in the middle of at the moment, and some are about to embark on. Then what I call a story part, the mindset, the energy, then the self aspect, how we perceive ourselves. What do we believe about ourselves? The stories that we're telling ourselves. How do we introduce ourselves? What identities we took on? What roles we have taken on? And again, those roles evolve. Sometimes we outgrow them. Sometimes we simply outlive them. Sometimes it's time to redefine them, and sometimes it's time to let them go, to release them. That does come with time of confusion, time of mourning even, and that is perfectly okay. You know, I don't feel sometimes that we talk about it nearly enough. I feel that that's a process that usually is left to each individual to deal with, sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning under the shower, so that other people in your family don't hear you crying. I've been there. And it is a process. you know? And if this is where you are, I do want you to feel seen and heard and validated that whatever it is that you're going through is okay. There's no rules. You and I should know that more than anybody as trailblazers, high performers. There's no rule book. We do things in our own way, and that oftentimes it's the part of that challenge in the first place. It would be so much easier if there was somebody out there with the marching orders and telling you, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, go. At one point, those formulas stop working. At one point, you have to chart out your own path, and you have to chart out your own approach, and you have to trust that process, and you have to trust yourself. Again, speaking from personal experience, I do not regret having hired anybody of my mentors, of my coaches. They arguably have saved my life when I was in the darkest and heaviest and most challenging times of my own journey. But I did notice oftentimes that I relinquished the control. I relinquished the cells of the, I want to say, decision making, and I abdicated my sovereignty, thinking that the investment that I made was only gonna be meaningful if I follow every single advice, if I implement on every single instruction or suggestion that those mentors have made. I have put incredible amount of trust and faith into them, and sometimes I made an error of thinking that things will simply get resolved just because of my proximity to that power. So that would be one thing that if I could change, I would retain that sense of sovereignty, and I would trust myself more, and I would apply more discernment, So I'm sharing this with you, and you might think, like, why are you saying this? Because, as a strategic advisor, as a narrative architect, as a mentor, isn't it your job to tell people what to do? No, it's not my job to tell you what to do. My job is to help you find your own way. My job is to offer possibilities and help you develop the tools that you retain that sovereignty. But again, this video is not meant to be a pitch or is not meant to promote my services. But again, the only intention here is to have a heart-to-heart and share with you things that I feel are not shared nearly enough in the circles of high achievers. So I wanted to create a space where you can just sit down and exhale for a moment and remove the mask of bravery and just be a human. So going back to that sense of self and evolving identities and dissolving identities and the process of becoming the next version of yourself. Sometimes that version of yourself is the truer version than the previous one. Sometimes, we learn through our childhood, we put on all the layers and we learn how to wear all the masks so that people who love us and people that we love are happy and satisfied and excited, and that they are proud of us, and that they trust us and that they support us, right? But then at one point we will look in the mirror and like, okay, great, I have ticked off all the boxes, I have exceeded all the expectations, I have carried all the roles, I have done everything. Who the hell is staring back at me in the mirror? It's a weird feeling to be had, because on one hand you have the external world who, first and foremost, they have insanely high standards for you. Secondly, they stop perceiving you as a human being, but rather a version that they can either admire and worship or hate with their guts, you know. Um, Either one, you possibly are not even perceived as a human in their eyes anymore. Um, Chances are the more successful you are, the more you're being judged and the less human you're allowed to be. Chances are the more successful you're becoming, um, the more people are judging your shortcomings, your emotions, your challenges, and simply wondering like, why are you even complaining? You have all the other privileges. Just shut up and dribble, shut up and smile, smile and wave, right? We know, we know. But then, you know, on the other hand, there's this internal world that is getting more and more shaken up and is less and less willing to contort itself, dismember, disfigure itself to fit into those boxes. And it is getting harder and harder to deny, to suppress, to dismiss. And again, it is a challenging time, especially when you have bought into the story of who you are, when you have embraced the identity you were given by others, when you have bought into the idea that your self-worth equals the numbers in a bank account, numbers on a scoreboard, numbers on a scale, number on a clock, whatever measuring technique and metrics and KPIs and whatever. Especially, you know, again, for high achievers, for athletes, for entrepreneurs, this is, you know, what validates us. This is how we assign our own value. And sometimes it can be very triggering when you know the greatness that still lies inside of you, untapped, the potential. And then you look around and everybody seems to be having it all figured out. And everybody seems to be living that best life. Everybody seems to be having it all together. And there you are, in a sense, living a double life. You know, smiling on the outside, but falling apart on the inside. Pushing through with determination, and yet being fearful and frustrated every single moment of it. Not knowing where the next client will come from, not knowing where the next contract will come from, not knowing where the next paycheck will come from, not knowing, you know, life obviously is full of uncertainty. None of us have a crystal ball to see in the future. And one of my mentors beautifully says it, you know, you will wonder how you did it, how to do it, and then you'll wonder how you did it. And I think that speaks volume on so many levels. But I just wanted to share with you that whatever is that you're experiencing, whatever is that you're going through, you're not alone. It is a part of the journey, but nobody talks about it. It's not a sexy rags to riches story. It's not polished. It's not something that actually, let me rephrase that. The taboo around it is that it will cost you your reputation, that it will cost you, that people will not understand you, that you better keep pretending and, you know, do not say anything until you have it all figured out. I would offer, however, that for some of us, that is exactly where trust is being formed. For those of us who have the gift of sensing people around us, we can sense it a mile away when somebody's pretending, when something is inauthentic, when somebody is struggling, and when somebody is genuine. We can sense it when something is manufactured just for the appearance, and when the exterior does not match the interior. Some of us have that gift, we can sense it. And in terms of business, I have learned at a long time that yes, you know, on one hand, if I were to follow every single guru out there, my marketing would look a lot different. My sales would look a lot different. I would be pressing the buttons, I would be evoking pain, I would be twisting the mindsets and manipulating emotions, but this is not me. I do not operate that way. I do not respond to things that way. I do not, it's out of the integrity. It's not congruent, not with how I carry myself, how I conduct my business, and especially not with people that I do want to work with and I work the best with. So in that regard, the standards that I'm holding for myself and for others are extremely high. And that bar is that authenticity, is that courage and willingness to be open and honest and raw and real. Because that is the hardest and the most vulnerable thing that we can do in a world that is ruthless, in a world that is judgmental, in a world that is hungry to tear you apart every moment that they get. The trolls on the internet will cut us into pieces every moment, every chance that they get. People in real life, maybe not so much, not into our face, but they will do it behind our backs. But that does not mean stooping to their level. That does not mean abandoning our sense, does not mean abandoning our humanity to appease to somebody who's not even meant to be in our circles, who does not matter in our lives, who does not matter and has no influence and no space in our energy for our focus, attention. you know what I mean. I hope you do know what I mean. And yeah, that's the hard part of this game, is the courage, the willingness, the capacity to remain human in this rapidly changing, twisted world that we are living in. And it pains me to say that. And sometimes I stare at the ceiling in the middle of the night wondering what's awaiting my kids years from now. But between you and I, yeah, that is a challenge in itself. That's where allowing yourself to be you, all of you, fully you, is just so important to develop, to hold, to nurture, to nourish, and to protect this sense, this space where you can become your next version of yourself, your more truer version of yourself. Whatever your journey is bringing, I want you to honor that. And yes, it's scary. It can feel lonely. It definitely can feel isolated. It definitely can feel extremely frustrating. It is a part of the journey and you can do it. The next piece I want to address, and forgive me, I did not mean for this video to be that long, but apparently there's all these things that simply need to be shared. So here we go. The strategic piece in itself. The strategy, in my experience, has been more than just 3-step formulas that you can Google up or that nowadays AI can generate for you in 2.3 seconds based on certain prompts. The strategy, the way I see it, is an ever-evolving, living ecosystem that will touch every single aspect of your life, that will touch every single aspect of your career or your business, of your being, your well-being, and it should be treated as such. Yes, it is very appealing to reach to those magical 3-step formulas and frameworks that have been quote-unquote time-tested and proven to hold. But for people like you and I, chances are that they simply don't. Not to the extent that we need them to, or certainly not for the time that they would need to. And sooner or later, it feels like they will start crumbling and take with them so much of what we try to build on that pretense foundation. And I know that sounds like a doom and gloom. I apologize if it does. But really, I hope you can give yourself permission to just trust your own journey and trust your own sense and trust your own discernment to do things your own way. Now, hear me out, and I'm going to say this with the utmost respect and love and acceptance. There were times in my own journey when I would ask for support with some technical things, and the response was work on your mindset. Then there'd be time when I would ask for support with some strategic things, and the response was just work on your mindset. Then I would ask for help with some tactical stuff. I would just work on your mindset. Then it was time when I would ask, for help with writing things better, designing things better, building things better, and the answer kept being just work on the mindset. I want you to be aware that, mindset is extremely powerful, and it's like again, we were talking about it as a compass, a guiding, an inner guide, things through which you will filter the experiences, through which you will filter decisions, and it will definitely influence the energy that you exude and the vibrational frequency that will in many ways determine what are the opportunities that are coming your way. But before we go all quantum physics here, going back to strategies and going back to mindset and going back to your courage to be you, and to do things your own way, I think that is really that key that will set you apart. We have coaches, we have mentors, we have advisors, we have people who hold up a mirror for us, who ask difficult questions, who ask questions differently, who help us see patterns, who help us elevate our perspective, shift our perception. All these people are invaluable, and I do firmly believe that nothing can be created in a vacuum and that you don't know what you don't know. And therefore, I will always advocate for having certain people in my own circle. That does not give me a free pass to abdicate my decision making, to abdicate my sovereignty, and that's a word that I very rarely use, although this is the second or third time in this video alone. But again, strategic peace is a living organism. It's an ecosystem. If you will see it as a constellation, right? And it keeps evolving, it keeps changing, it keeps moving around. And it's on you and your responsibility and a gift that you can give to yourself to not try to lock it down and write it in a stone, but allow it to expand and evolve just like you keep expanding and evolving. And for some, that feels like, oh, thank gosh, somebody just said it and I can actually do that. For some, it might be, holy shit, I'm lost, just figured something out and now I have to restart again. I get it. I hear you. You're not alone. But I do think, like I said, some of the conversations are usually just reserved for the highest levels of rooms that many don't even have access to. And I wanted to bring this into more general conversations because they are just, they should be held in and made accessible and made known. And yeah, because they can be super empowering and liberating all at once. So strategies, they mean different things to different people and they serve different purposes. But again, at the end of the day, it is what you make it for you and how you define it for you and what you want it to be for you. And I hope you get the answer, or I hope you get the permission, or I hope you got the idea or inspiration or motivation that you might have been missing in this part. in conversation when it comes to strategies. And I'm talking as a strategist. You know, somebody would say, you know, I'm the type of person you can wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning with my eyes closed and right hand tied behind my back. I'll create the best and the most amazing strategy for you. But again, the final decision, it's still, you have to assume the ownership of it, just like in sports. You know, at the end of the day, you take the ownership of every single decision or indecision. It's as simple as that. So now the practical application. How do those things show up in real life? Differently for different people. When we talk about 2025 in particular being so challenging for many, you know, there's not one particular scenario that I can keep in mind. For some, that was the year when, you know, you had all the goals and you have all the aspirations and you had all the visions and you had all the amazing plans worked out, and things just wouldn't go anywhere. Maybe in an athletic career, it was a season filled with injuries. It was a season when the team just wouldn't click. It was a season when, for some unbeknownst circumstances, things just didn't go your way, and loss after loss after loss. And now you're standing here a year older. You have to decide, will I push my body, my mind, my soul, my family, my whatever life through another season for, I don't know, redemption, hoping for a better outcome? Can I see it to completion on a lower note instead of a high note? That is entirely up to you, but I do want to say that I know how that feels. I do know how actually it feels when the rug is pulled from underneath you and you're told up front in the middle of the season that this is it. Because of the injury, your life as you know it is over. Luckily, I was able to overcome that, go back to sports, and I was able to end my athletic career knowing that it's coming to an end. And even then, it caught me off guard when it came after me, you know, that one day you wake up and you're no longer who you were for so many years. So for some, 2025 was that year of reckoning. For some, 2025 was the challenging year because maybe you were looking for that right person to enter your life and you were doing everything that you could. You were reading all the scripts. You were becoming the version that's supposed to be in your authentic energy. And you were reading and learning and studying how to speak, how to behave, how to respond, how to carry conversation, how to do all the things that you're told to do in order to attract the soulmate of yours. And maybe it did not happen. Maybe it's the year when your partnership fell apart. Maybe it's the year when a relationship did come to a completion. And it's the year when you had to choose, make a decision to stay or to go. Again, I have been personally in both scenarios when I was looking at the moon, full moon, and all that I wished for was that person to come into my life. And I was in a season when we didn't know if our partnership was going to make it, when I was willing to walk away, when it was one of the things, I love us, I love you, and I love myself more. And we fought through that and we worked through that. But I know the sleepless nights, I know the agony, I know the pain, I know the grieving, I know the uncertainty, I know the guilt, I know the shame. I also know that in my case it felt like ego was so excited, but my heart kept saying, this is not it, this is not how this ends. Trust and choose love, and let's go back to the drawing board. And I had to learn how to put my ego aside and trust my heart. So I have been there. And then for 2025, for some, it might have been a year when, in terms of businesses or in terms of careers, things that you had high hopes and expectations and dreams and plans mapped out and budgets worked out and all the workflows and goals and everything was all set to go and just burned to the ground. I have been there too more than once. And here's what I want you to hear. When you're in the middle of it, it feels hopeless. Or actually, let me reframe that. What could happen is that on paper, everything is as it needs to be. You are doing everything by the book. You are doing everything that anybody could possibly recommend, covering all the bases. Then you're trying to really still yourself and like, okay, if I go back to my somatic sensation, what is that's calling me forward? What can I release? What am I holding on to because I have already invested all the time and energy and resources, but it's clearly not working? And what is the thing that is really pulling me forward? What is the thing that if I close my eyes and have a magic wand and imagine the ideal scenario, what would that be? Sometimes it can be the same thing. Sometimes it can be something entirely different. Sometimes the thing that is pulling you forward makes no sense to anybody. Sometimes not even you. Sometimes it's impossible to articulate. Sometimes it's impossible to justify. Sometimes it's impossible to get anybody on board because, like I said, it doesn't make sense to anybody, and it shouldn't, because it's not their thing, it's yours. So I know that sense, that agony, that frustration, that feeling of just being at loss of words and feeling it being at there's no more ideas, there's nothing more that you can possibly do, and still things don't work, right? And it's frustrating when you look back or when you look around. It's like everybody's seem to be excelling with half the knowledge and a third of the expertise and experience, and they are rocking it, and here you are beating yourself against the wall with bills starting to accumulate because decisions of potential clients are being made way slower than the due dates and the days on the calendar changing. Like I said, I have been there. I know that feeling. And I have also learned, and I think that was one of the great gifts from both of my parents. They were both entrepreneurs, traders turned entrepreneurs. And I remember sitting with my dad often at his Excel spreadsheets. I don't do Excel spreadsheets. He'd give me an Excel spreadsheet, my eyes get crossed, and I'm like, yeah, no. He excelled with Excel spreadsheets, no pun intended. And what he would oftentimes show me, we would look at those numbers. I was like, well, that's weird. And then we would zoom out and zoom out and zoom out. And all of a sudden, from week to week, we would look from month to month, we would look from year to year, and decade to decade. And that's when really the patterns emerged. And you know what those patterns always look like? They look like a heartbeat. And you know how a heartbeat looks like? Up and down. If it's a flat line, it means life is over. So one of the gifts that my parents gave me was that embodiment and visual presentation of what entrepreneurship gets to look like on a daily basis and throughout on a course of a decade or 2 or 3. And that the beating line like a heartbeat, as frustrating as it is to navigate on a daily basis, it is simply a part of the journey. So what I have learned, through my own, I am one of those individuals who, to save my life, can fake it. When something comes to completion, it's complete, whether a bridge to the next thing is built or not. And that can be a hugely frustrating part, not just for me, but also for my family. But I have learned in those seasons to look back and remind myself and study those patterns, like, oh, okay, it's a season. And sometimes the season can be a year. And I know a year is a freaking lifetime when you are trying to get something to work and when you're trying to get something off the ground and when you're this close to achieving the goal and when you had all the perfect plans in place and things just toppled. I get that. But on the other hand, looking at the pattern, realizing it's just a season, that you're not late, that nothing's wrong with you, that you're not over exaggerating, that you're not weak, that you're not a failure, can be that saving grace that allows you to then take a deep breath, recalibrate, and recognize that perhaps it is the time to slow down. Just like right now, if you were to look through my window here, it's snowing outside. Every year winter comes. Every year things stop growing. Every year trees lose the leaves, water leaves the branches and the trunk, everything dries down, returns to the roots, and rests. And then spring comes and everything becomes alive again. We are no different, you know, and in business, that can be the scary part, especially in the world we are living in today that is changing so rapidly, and it's full of unknown. It's full of fear that I would say we are feeling on a cellular level, because for many of us, it's been passed through epigenetics. Our ancestors were where we are right now. We have seen history repeat over and over and over again. And with the news and everything else out there, it's like doom and gloom every single time. So of course that's a reality we're living in. You can't just ignore it and say it doesn't exist, because it does. It impacts us one way or another. It impacts us in a way we interact with each other. It impacts us in a way that we can or cannot run our businesses, that we can or cannot serve our clients, that we can or cannot find our business partners, that we can or cannot sell our services or products. Because if the market is not buying, if the market doesn't have the money, if the borders are closed, if the tariffs are imposed, those are real things that carry real consequences and require real recalibration. And I think recognizing those seasons and building the nervous system and the capacity to be able to carry that, and allowing yourself to keep evolving and trusting that, as frustrating and scary as things are, as a stalled business or a broken relationship or not finding the ideal partner or ending of an athletic career, it is all part of a journey. You know, I wish we all had a magic wand and make every hardship magically disappear. That's not the case. But I do want to validate that whatever it is that you're going through, again, I want to say it again, you are not alone. You certainly are not the only person going through it. You're most definitely not the first one, and you will not be the last one who's going through it. My wish is only that more people were talking about it, that we became more open, and that there be less taboo attached to these seasons, when things just fall sideways, when identities start to evolve and relationships come to a completion and businesses are falling apart. But there's no shame in that. It's simply part of the process. And yeah, I do hope, again, that whatever was offered in this video, and whatever it is that you were seeking, that you found it. Again, there's no pitch, there's no invitation, there's no sales here. I simply hope that offering this perspective, offering these insights, helped you at least a little bit. And if there's somebody out there that you feel needs to hear this and needs to see this video, please share it with them. I would also love to know if you're willing to share whatever it is that you're through, or what the takeaways are. Leave a comment below. You know, even though I don't know you, I do feel that just the right person is sitting here on the other side. So I want to say thank you for being here. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time. And you've got this. Take care.